All right, I wasn't done making videos. I know it's been a little while since I made a last video. I haven't been too busy. I've just been reading a lot of books and hadn't bothered making a video. So I wanted to talk about every book that I've read this year. I was thinking about making like the 10 best books I read this year, but there were some books I disliked and I really wanted to talk about the ones I didn't like. So first, I read Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel, science fiction book. And it's a lot different from books that I usually read. I think my girlfriend gifted it to me because she was growing concerned at the proportion of male to female authors that I read. This was also a breath of fresh air in the sense of the general attitude and tone of the book. Even though it's about a sort of apocalyptic virus that wipes out all of humanity, there's a much more optimistic tone to it, and it's a little more lighthearted and less heavy and dense than most of the books that I read. I think she probably notices that I read overly ambitious books that are really challenging and actually less fun to read. They're more fun to mention to people that you've read. This was a book that was actually just fun to read. So I would definitely recommend it. If you're a casual reader or if you're a one that really enjoys like super ambitious, challenging, high literature, I think it can appeal to anyone. I Saw Her That Night by Drago Janchar was the second book I read this year. I've mentioned that before on my channel in my second video about historical fiction. So James by Percival Everett. This is obviously a fantastic book. I think it just won the Pulitzer Prize for fiction. Yeah, really cool that Percival Everett is getting a lot of shine. I already talked about this book in my last video, so I won't go too much into it. I will argue that it's actually not his best, at least in my opinion. It's awesome that he's getting the recognition for it, but there's a lot of his books that I enjoyed even more, such as I Am Sidney Poitier by Percival Everett, the fourth book I read this year. This one I also mentioned on my channel, but it was in the last video. It's just this wildly goofy, kind of whimsical story that's also at the same time a reflection on Black masculinity, expectations of performing your etc. or race and what other people expect from you in terms of this sort of racialized performance also a gendered performance. Fantastic book. I liked it even more than James. Next was Erasure by Percival Everett. Also talked about this one in my last video, so I won't talk too much about it, but this was easily one of the top 5 books that I read this year. Check it out. I couldn't recommend it highly enough, and I would recommend it higher than James even. Read James too, but also make sure you also read Erasure and go back further into Percival Everett's bibliography because he's a fantastic writer. The Circle by Dave Eggers. It's a dystopian novel about a overarching tech company that's basically Facebook, Google, Amazon kind of all rolled into one. And this was written, I want to say in 2012. Dave Eggers, a guy from the San Francisco Bay Area himself. And this is kind of his take in 2012 when the tech industry in the Bay Area is growing to even more sort of preposterous levels of power and influence, particularly within local politics in San Francisco and the Bay Area, but also this growing huge influence into federal politics. And obviously 13 years later with kind of the US descending into fascism and this sort of weird techno-fascism kind of, some of the political and social commentary is rather heavy-handed. It's, I think, really nice. I was reading reviews of the novel, and people certainly had problem with just sort of how over the top and heavy-handed it was. But I think it's totally fine when books are heavy-handed. Like, I think it's very clear he's trying to make a point, and I think he makes it really well. If you generally feel anxiety about tech corporations and their influence into our social lives and kind of tech companies in the way that they're ripping apart the social fabric of how humans interact with one another, this is a fantastic book. I really enjoyed it too. Next, I read American Psycho by Bret Easton Ellis. Plenty has been said about this book already, but I was really blown away. I think this was the second book I read of Bret Easton Ellis, and this is obviously considered his finest work. And it certainly was to me. General content warning with the whole thing. It's probably one of the most grotesque books I've ever read. I definitely won't ever be rereading that one because it is extremely graphic, extremely violent. And I think I think it's kind of necessary, I guess. I'm not sure. I felt a little conflicted because on one hand, I was completely blown away with how well this was written. And he is describing an exact kind of an exact kind of mindset that does exist in real life, and then he takes it a step further with this guy being horrifyingly murderous serial killer. But if you're generally squeamish, you can skip that one. It was tough for me to read even, but at the same time, it's a fantastic book. So a light recommendation on that one. Next, I read The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho. I've read that before, I think my freshman year of college. It was a wildly different experience my second time reading it. Maybe just because I'm a little more, I don't know. I was just reading it from an extremely optimistic point of view, and kind of, maybe I was more open-minded to this kind of stuff my freshman year of college. I just had less fun with it this time. Maybe that's because I was on the train and not paying super close attention to it. I don't know. I remember my first time reading The Alchemist. It was something that like blew my mind. It is an absolutely beautiful and kind of like uplifting book, but this time reading it, I just felt less blown away. Maybe because I've read it before, maybe because I'm a hardened, withered 27-year-old adult who has had the open-mindedness and optimism beaten out of me by adulthood. But I had less fun with it. It's an amazing book. I think everyone should read it, but I had less fun reading it the second time, I have to be honest. Was The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. This is an amazing book. I spent quite some time reading it because it's a behemoth, but wow, this book really blew me away. I have been looking forward to reading it for so long, and I guess it just because it's so long, I was putting it off, but man, I'm really, really glad I read it. It's all about this Karamazov family, and they're kind of like this dumpy, kind of trashy family. The father is described as this sensualist who's cheating all the time. All kinds of kind of disgusting stuff about the father. He's a sensualist in the sense that he's having orgies all the time. He's a drunk also. And then he has a few sons. Alexei, who is the one who is kind of the intellectual. If I'm remembering this correctly, there's one brother who's kind of like the protagonist, or one of the main sort of like, he is kind of like the totem for the audience, I guess. No, that's not Alexei, it's Alyosha, something like that. I think Alyosha is kind of like, if you were to pick a main protagonist, it's Alyosha. He's like the intellectual, the most compassionate and morally grounded Karamazov brother. There's another brother who's also a sensualist like his father. Man, I'm realizing now I've forgotten much of what is actually going on in the book. What I know of his writing is that he likes to take these stories of otherwise regular people, or even kind of the dregs of society, and uses their stupid, like their white trash situations, like the cheating father and the children out of wedlock. And I forget I think the inciting incident is one of the brothers is killed, or the father is killed. The father is killed, and they don't know which brother did it, but they suspect that one of the brothers did it. It's just this kind of like shit that only happens in just, it's not only happens, but it's just a super white trash situation. But Dostoevsky uses this kind of like stupid story to really kind of like explore some of the most like compelling themes of life itself. Stuff like faith versus reason, other themes. I really, really love this story. It kind of has so much depth to it, while on the surface, it's kind of just some trashy people getting up to trashy shit. I loved The Brothers Karamazov. Highly, highly recommend it. A nonfiction book called Virtue Hoarders by Catherine Liu. This is basically a case against the quote-unquote professional managerial class. It really kind of talks about how so much of our professional working industry is made up of these office workers that kind of fundamentally do nothing. They're sort of upper middle class, and they're ultimately subservient to capital. I suppose she includes herself in this. I would include myself in this. The Trees by Percival Everett. I spoke about this one before in another video. Next, I read Dr. No by Percival Everett. Talked about this one in a video before. I read Half-Blood Blues by S.E. Edugyan. This was an amazing book. It took place in and around Berlin during World War II. It's about this group of black jazz musicians. One of them is presumed to be kidnapped by the Nazis and sent likely to his death. And it's all about his former bandmates dealing with his death in the decades after. They go back to post-reunification Berlin, and look for their old friend. It was a really, really an emotional story, and another amazing book that I would highly recommend. I think it won some awards. Mao 2 by Don DeLillo. This was the second time reading Mao 2. Still didn't really understand it. Don DeLillo is a fantastic writer. This one's over my head. Next, Libra by Don DeLillo. This is my favorite Don DeLillo book. This book is really amazing. It's about Lee Harvey Oswald, and it's fictional, but it's kind of speculative. Like maybe this is just what Don DeLillo believes was a conspiracy to assassinate the president, John F. Kennedy. But it's basically portrays Lee Harvey Oswald as this like goofy nut job who is just a kind of an idiot and has these communist sympathies. And he's growing up as this like Marxist in the United States during the Cold War, and he doesn't really know what to do with these political ideologies. He moves to the USSR, and he can't quite hack it there. He comes back to the US, and he's kind of just this goofball idiot who's not good at navigating through adulthood, and he keeps kind of just being like, oh, why do bad things keep happening to me? Like, and he's just an idiot, and he just kind of allows himself to get caught up in this super like sprawling conspiracy to assassinate the president, and he ends up falling into this trap basically. Something that I really love about this novel kind of explores is the idea of this guy not being a genius by any means. He's an idiot, and he just kind of gets lucky. He just kind of falls into being a part of one of the most earth-shattering moments in history ever. Next, I read Miles, the autobiography by Miles Davis. I've been randomly just like the past year, I've pretty much exclusively listened to jazz music suddenly. This is like the only music I listen to anymore. And I think it was the Bomani Jones podcast. He mentioned Miles Davis's autobiography as just one of those memoirs where he just is just this kind of grumpy older guy who doesn't care and just tells all. And that it certainly was. This was one of the funnest books that I read all year. I'm generally kind of down on autobiographies and memoirs. There's, especially from a famous person, like an artist or musician or athlete, whatever, politician. Autobiographies usually suck, and I avoid reading them at all costs. But I let myself, get sucked into this one, and I'm glad I did. This is an autobiography, one of the few, in my opinion, that are worth reading. This was an awesome memoir. I loved it. If you like jazz music, check it out. One of the things I thought was so cool about this, just a kind of random thing I noticed, the way he talks about jazz music is like the way I would talk about playing pickup basketball. Like I never thought of music in these terms, but he talks about, you show up to a club and you'll hop on saxophone, and if you can't play fast enough, they kick you out. They Can't Kill Us Until They Kill Us by Hanif Abdur-Rakib, collection of essays. He just has a way with pulling in different aspects of pop culture or more niche urban culture and connecting it to broader socio-political issues. He's really an amazing writer. I loved this book. I look forward to reading more of Hanif Abdur-Rakib's works. Dilla Time by Dan Charnas. This was a biography of Jay Dilla. I keep seeing this everywhere. It's in every bookstore that I visit. This book receives so much praise for being more than just about a really famous producer that was influential. I guess it was fine. I did not need to read 300 pages about Jay Dilla. I think this book could have been like 60 pages and I would have been happy, to be honest. It's really well written, but like I don't need to know that much about Jay Dilla. I don't need to know that much just in general about anything. This was a fine book if you're like really, really into this kind of music, or if you're really into Jay Dilla, like if you're a super fan or something, check it out. But this book was fine. It was fine. I read Perfection by Vincenzo Latronico. This is a pretty new book by this Italian author that's been getting a crazy amount of buzz. There was an article about it in the New Yorker. It's a book that is appearing everywhere right now. It's super hot, especially in the streets of Berlin where I live. That's where this book takes place. And it's about a couple who move to Berlin and they kind of live these sort of young professional yuppie and also somewhat like faux bohemian lifestyles. And it's all about them kind of struggling to find any sense of meaning or purpose or belonging. People who move to a city and make no attempts to be a part of it and kind of just extract from a city and don't really contribute very much themselves. It's been flying off the shelves here. Everyone is reading this book in Berlin right now. I did not like it. Not because it's critical of a type of person that I might be considered myself. It's not because I disagree with what he's saying. I absolutely agree with pretty much everything he's saying. But my God, this was a slog. It was only like 100 pages, and I could not wait to be done with it because it was just boring. Like, all the commentary was super predictable, like super heavy-handed. It was just like, literally there were points in the novel where it was just saying shit like, oh, you know, they would have done blah blah blah, but they were too busy on their phones. Like, man, I felt it was so unoriginal and just boring. Like, it was a snooze fest. It was only 100 pages, but I felt like it went on forever. I don't recommend this book. Everyone is fucking buying this book in Berlin, super stocked in every store because people are buying it so fast. They can't stock it fast enough because it's a book that's getting buzz and it takes place in Berlin. But man, I did not like it. I thought it was poo-poo. Don't bother reading this one. Even if you live in Berlin, it's like cool, I guess. Like, my neighborhood was mentioned a few times and I recognized the names of places that were mentioned. It mentioned my favorite parks or whatever. But man, that doesn't make for a good book. This book, I didn't like it. Which was a huge disappointment because I really expected to like this book. Next, I read A Visit from the Goon Squad by Jennifer Egan. I heard a lot of praise of this book, and I'm not sure exactly what inspired me to pick it up other than hearing a lot of praise about it. It sounded really cool. I don't know if I was just reading this on the subway and not super locked into it or what. I don't know, but I just couldn't really get into it. Maybe I was just not very focused those days when I was reading it. I don't know, but I don't have much to say about it. Rabbit Run by John Updike. This was my second time reading it. Loved this book. I've been looking forward to reading the next one in the series when my hold is available from the library. But it's about this guy, Rabbit, who's like this Harry Rabbit Angstrom, who's like this high school basketball star who abandons his adult life with his wife and children to run away, basically. But he only gets like so far. He like barely gets to the next town over or something before he returns to his hometown. When he's trying to run away, he can't even, like, he goes down the street, basically. He starts living with a sex worker, and then he like goes back to live with his wife. Some really tragic shit happens, but yeah, this is an amazing book about one of the most unlikable protagonists of all time. Don't read it if you like to read books where you're cheering for the protagonist all the time, because this is not a guy that you will like. The perspective that the book is told from. A wonderful, wonderful commentary on like just kind of young, aimless men. This is something that people have been talking about so much the past few months, about men being wandering adrift in society, and what are men supposed to do about their masculinity and stuff like that. And that's kind of what this book is about a little bit. It's this guy who was once liked for being good at putting a ball in a hoop, and then was really struggling to find anything that makes him useful in adulthood, and just kind of lets it build up and build up and build up until he can't take it anymore, and he just abandons his life. I think there's plenty that we can learn from this book. Next was the book that surprised me the most this year. I read The Right Stuff by Tom Wolfe. Man, this book is amazing. It's a nonfiction book, and it's written about the test pilots of the Air Force, Navy, and so on, who were selected in the 1950s to be a part of the NASA Mercury program, which were sending the first humans into space. And I think this is the best, maybe one of the best, or if not the best nonfiction book I've ever read. I was excited to read it because I've randomly been going down a lot of Wikipedia rabbit holes about the space program and stuff like that. I don't know why. And I expected it to be okay. I've read a few books by Tom Wolfe before, and I kind of just figured him to be this dork Poindexter nerd. Like, I read the Electric Kool-Aid Acid Test and was kind of let down by it because it's just this nerd. But he is the perfect guy to talk about the space program, because I think he tells this story in just a very sort of patriotic and jingoistic way, which I wouldn't necessarily agree with some of the sentiments that he's telling the story from. And maybe he does, maybe he feels this way about it, maybe he doesn't, but this is the perfect tone to tell a story like this. Purely a propaganda effort, just a pure PR campaign. And this is what the space program existed for. It wasn't existing for science necessarily. It was just to get some PR points to show those Soviets that we could also go into space or whatever. But I felt it was profoundly creative in the way that he was telling this story. And man, I couldn't recommend it highly enough. This is an amazing book. Even if you're not even curious about the space program or anything like that, it's just fantastic. And I feel like there's so much I could say about this, but for like the family members and friends that are watching this and are thinking about reading this book, just read it. I won't spoil any more of it. Just read it. Next, I read The Bonfire of the Vanities by also Tom Wolfe, and this one blew me away too. It was like 800 pages, and I just enjoyed The Right Stuff so much that I thought, okay, I'll check out like his most acclaimed novel. And it was fantastic. I think it portrays New York City, Manhattan in the 80s in such a great way. And everyone involved in this book, all these men are kind of just driven by their very male egos. And yeah, I was kind of surprised because Tom Wolfe, he's a dork. He's a dork in my opinion. I've read other books by him and I was generally unimpressed, but this is a fantastic book. And I was once again surprised because everything I've read about this guy in his personal life just strikes me as lame. But I was really kind of impressed and surprised at sort of how well he was able to kind of cut into society at the time and portray it in such a realistic and also vibrant and exciting way. I didn't think he had it in him. I really didn't. Next, I read Trainspotting by Irvine Welsh. This is when I traveled to Edinburgh and bought it there to just get into Scotland and some of the Scottish fiction. And man, this is an awesome book. It is written phonetically in Scottish English. A challenge to read, but not as challenging as I expected. Really, like if you've seen the movie, you probably would expect this novel to also be kind of grotesque at times, sort of horrifying, and it is. It's all about like these young people living in a kind of economically depressed part of Scotland's history, kind of falling into the throes of addiction and where it takes them. It's a fantastically written book. It's extremely raw and sort of like punk rock kind of, I guess. But yeah, another book that I thought was amazing and I really enjoyed. Kind of funny, I was in Edinburgh with my girlfriend. I went out and bought this book, and when she was also out, she bought it. So we have 2 copies. Let me know in the comments if you want a copy of Trainspotting, or text me, any of my friends watching this. Text me if you want this copy of Trainspotting by Irvine Welsh. I'll send it to you, or give it to you. Spook Who Sat by the Door by Sam Greenlee. This is a novel about a black man who is recruited as part of this like diversity program in the 1960s. It's written in the 1960s. This diversity program of the CIA to take in its first black officers of the CIA, and he's the guy chosen. The main character, Freeman, Dan Freeman is selected to be the protagonist. He's made the first black officer in the CIA. He moves up the ranks a little bit for 5 years, learns everything he can while sitting by the door, in his own words, learns everything about things such as guerrilla warfare tactics, counterintelligence. He leaves the CIA and he starts his own guerrilla movement in Chicago, which spreads out to all the other major cities of the US in downtrodden black neighborhoods to basically rise up and start this sort of genuinely militant revolutionary movement, and while using everything he learned from the CIA. This is a profoundly political and very charged book, which, to no surprise, really struggled to get published in the United States, and it was actually published in the UK back in the 60s. It was made into a film in 1973, which was actually pulled. The FBI literally pulled it out of circulation, so the movie never got a chance in theaters because it was just too overtly political, and maybe the ideas were too dangerous. The film never got a chance. The book never really got a chance in the US. I love this book. Obviously, the political takes are ham-fisted and heavy-handed, but that's the point. Next, I read Tragic Magic by Wesley Brown. And the whole book is kind of about these series of memories that are triggered by his kind of first day out. and spins a yarn or tells the tale of how he comes of age and grasps with his masculinity, adolescence, and also particularly the intersection of masculinity and blackness. This was also one of the books that surprised me the most. I expected to like it, and I really, really loved it. I think it's a relatively lesser known book, but I would put it up there with any of the best of James Baldwin's novels. This is an amazing, amazing book, kind of in a similar vein to some of those. Yeah, Wesley Brown. I'm gonna check out more of his books because this one was amazing. Tragic Magic, check it out. 2 books, Autobiography of a Brown Buffalo and The Revolt of the Cockroach People by Oscar Zeta Acosta. This guy, most well known for being Dr. Gonzo, attorney of Hunter S. Thompson's Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas. He was this civil rights attorney in the Bay Area, Mexican-American, a Chicano, becomes a little depressed and disillusioned, and eventually quits and moves down to East LA to join this sort of burgeoning revolutionary movement of Chicano civil rights. Absolutely like a unique voice, Oscar Zeta Acosta, and I think most people would probably categorize him with voices such as Hunter S. Thompson. It reads a lot similarly to something like Fear and Loathing or any of Hunter S. Thompson's writing. I would agree. That's probably what it reminded me of most. Kind of similar, even a little postmodernist, a little absurdist in almost like a Thomas Pynchon. Oscar Zeta Acosta, these are his 2 books. It really wonderfully tells the tale of Chicano identity, whimsical, slightly absurdist, and larger than life tale. It's semi-autobiographical, but it really reads like a novel, of course. These are amazing, super, super underrated, and I highly recommend either of them. Lastly, the book I read this week, most recently, The Circle of the Snake by Grafton Tanner. This is about nostalgia and utopia in the age of big tech. One of the most interesting things, this is a short book, like 150 pages, and it's rather academic. One of the most interesting things I found about this was the idea of pre-recession nostalgia. And look back and think, this is a simpler time. They didn't have phones. They didn't have whatever. And when really what it was is just better material conditions. Super short read if you're, again, generally anxious of big tech and its sort of grasp on society. Check it out. So that's all the 29 books that I read so far this year. Right now, I'm reading Mason and Dixon by Thomas Pynchon, which is going right over my head. I'm like 200 pages in, and I've understood like almost nothing, to be honest. So if anybody watching has read this book before and has, I don't know, tips or like, I don't know, a podcast or something that I could listen to that explains some of the themes to me, I would really, really appreciate some advice on how to read Mason and Dixon, or generally how to read books by Thomas Pynchon and stuff like that. I would love some advice. Maybe I'll talk about things I've learned from Mason and Dixon in a future video. Let me know if you enjoyed this video. Leave some comments, please. I know some of y'all be watching my videos, friends of mine and family of mine. Leave a comment. I'm sure it helps in the algorithm or whatever. But yeah, man, get that engagement up. Strangers, if you don't know me and you're watching this video, leave a comment. Let me know who you are. Say, I don't know, blow up those comments and I'll respond or something. Like, let's get some dialogue going in the comments. I would love to get some book recommendations from my friends or just people who have clicked on this video and are still watching somehow. Like, comment, subscribe. I don't know how to end the video. That's the end of the video.